Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. I am Smriti Rastogi. Starting today, the 5th edition of the Raisina Dialogue will address some of the most challenging issues facing the global community. The three-day event this year is addressing the theme 21 at 20, Navigating the Alpha Century. The Raisina Dialogue 2020 brings together 700 international participants from over 100 countries. Foreign ministries from 12 countries are taking part in the dialogue. The Raisina Dialogue is committed to addressing the most challenging issues facing the global community. Structured as a multi-stakeholder discussion, it involves heads of state, cabinet ministers, and local government officials, major private sector executives, members of the media, and academics. Today, in depth, we are discussing the various editions of the Raisina Dialogue, what India hopes to achieve through it, and its significance to the world today. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is attending the inaugural session of India's flagship global conference on geopolitics and geoeconomics, the Raisina Dialogue. 7 former heads of the state or government will also share their views on important challenges facing the world in the coming days. Here's a look at the key agenda of the Raisina Dialogue 2020.
If we don't develop more of a team spirit between the governments of Europe, it will be difficult to compete.
Australia seeks to develop a deep strategic partnership with India. The 5th edition of the Raisina Dialogue is a 3-day event that will attempt to address challenging issues facing the global community. The theme this year is 21 at 20, Navigating the Alpha Century. Raisina Dialogue 2020 brings together 700 international participants from over 100 countries. 40% speakers this year are women. Foreign ministers from 12 countries are taking part in the dialogue, including the foreign ministers of Russia, Iran, Australia, Maldives, South Africa, Estonia, Czech Republic, Denmark, Hungary, Latvia, Uzbekistan, and European Union. Secretary General of the SCO and the Secretary General of the Commonwealth are also taking part in the dialogue. NSA of Afghanistan, Deputy NSA of the United States, and several ministers from various countries will present their ideas. Heads of over 30 global think tanks will present their viewpoints across different sessions.
Navigating the Alpha Century. Now, alpha male, alpha is something which is changing, something which is very strong. And we are now at the start of a new decade, 2020, this is now 2020. And the challenges which are coming, as I said, are coming from 3 directions. Globalization is being challenged. Trade architecture needs some tweaking because some countries have benefited, some countries have not benefited. And the technological advancements which are coming very, very rapidly, whether it is big data, artificial intelligence, and globalization, robotization, it will have a huge impact. So, in this context, the in Raisina Dialogue, they will see the impact of changes both on geostrategy and geoeconomics.
The presence of Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif is significant as it comes in the wake of heightened tensions with the United States after the killing of Iranian Quds Force commander Qasem Soleimani. On the inaugural day, the focus is on important challenges facing the world related to globalization, 2030 agenda, the role of technology in the modern world, climate change, and counter-terrorism. Several former heads of government who will take part in the discussions include Helen Clark, former Prime Minister of New Zealand, Hamid Karzai, former President of Afghanistan, Stephen Harper, former Prime Minister of Canada, Carl Bildt, former Prime Minister of Sweden, Anders Rasmussen, former Prime Minister of Denmark, Shering Tobgay, former Prime Minister of Bhutan, and Han Sung-soo, former Prime Minister of South Korea. Over the course of 3 days, 80 sessions will take place around the broad themes which include the nationalist impulsive challenge as global institutions and collective action, the debate on the global trading architecture, role of technology in data mining, political, economic and military power, the global development agenda, and state-individual relationships in the age of digital communities and cyberspace.
This particular dialogue is interestingly named 21 at 20. The 21st century is 20 years of age. Now, what is happening in the world today? We are seeing a particular kind of leadership emerge. We are seeing youth protests, youth movements hit streets across the world. Now, there's a lot of apprehension in the minds of policymakers, there's lots of apprehension in the minds of people as to which direction multilateralism is really moving. So this dialogue basically is a multilateral platform. We are bringing together almost 100 countries which are coming together in New Delhi to discuss their core concerns, to exchange ideas about what is the state of the world today and what is the state of their own internal politics and how does it affect how they look upon the world.
External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar will address the session The India Way, preparing for a century of growth and contest on the 15th of January. In the past 5 years, the Raisina Dialogue has established itself as a prestigious global event, uniting the best strategic thinkers of the world. It sets the tone for India's intensive diplomatic engagement this year. With inputs from Vipul Agarwal, Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
The theme for the 4th edition of the Raisina Dialogue, held in 2019, was a world reorder, new geometrics, fluid partnerships, uncertain outcomes. More than 2,000 participants, including 600 delegates and speakers from over 92 countries, took part in the dialogue. Norwegian Prime Minister Erna Solberg delivered the inaugural address in presence of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and former late External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj. The 4th edition of the Raisina Dialogue was organized in New Delhi from 8th to 10th of January 2019. Norwegian Prime Minister Erna Solberg inaugurated the event in the presence of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. International policy makers, academicians and strategic experts deliberated on the theme A World Recorder, New Geometrics, Fluid Partnerships, Uncertain Outcomes. The discussions also addressed issues arising from ongoing global transitions and changes to the world order triggered by unique leaders, innovative partnerships and new technologies.
2019 was discussing how the world was, it was talking about the new order of the world. It started discussing about, is the world in disorder? Is there a looming shape of the world order taking place? And we saw excellent participation from across the world. Now this time what we are discussing is how when we are seeing a particular kind of leadership emerge, when we are seeing protests in large parts of the world, where multilateralism still tends to be struggling, what is really going to be the direction of the future world order? And platforms like the Raisina are fundamentally attempts to bring about more of global governance.
In her inaugural address, the Norwegian Prime Minister asserted that the principle of might is right can't be the basis of governing oceans or indeed anything else. In her keynote speech, former External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj underscored that India stood for a democratic and rules-based international order in which all nations could thrive as equals.
If we are to build a sustainable ocean economy, we must stop the degradation of the world's marine ecosystems. We must improve the health of the oceans. And that's also why I have established a high-level panel for sustainable ocean economy. And as the ocean economy policy body consists of serving leaders of the world, our ambition is to trigger, amplify, and accelerate action to promote ocean protection and productivity.
India's own engagement with the world is rooted in its civilizational ethos, which has at its heart coexistence, pluralism, openness, dialogue, and democratic values. Today, India, with 1/6 of humanity, is experiencing economic and social transformation on a scale which has rarely been seen in the history of the world. While the prosperity of Indians, both at home and abroad, and security of our citizens are of paramount importance, self-interest alone does not propel us.
Discussions also centered around the Indo-Pacific region, in which former Chief of Naval Staff Admiral Sunil Lanba and top armed forces commanders of US, Japan and Australia took part. Foreign Secretary Vijay Gokhale articulated India's foreign policy challenges in the neighborhood and beyond.
Indo-Pacific region is predominantly a maritime space, straddling across both Indian and the Pacific Ocean. Though I chose to use the word predominantly maritime, I do not intend to underplay the significant continental connotation of this region. The rapid and robust economic development in the region has catalyzed an accompanying widespread military buildup. While such trends are not unusual, a high degree of ambiguity in the strategic intentions of such nations remains a concern.
The age of the internet has freed us all from the tyrannies of the geographies we were limited to, and the reemergence of China, India and other economies have created new possibilities for aid, for trade, for technology, for infrastructure and so on. So the question really then is, while the opportunities exist for all of us who were left behind in the agricultural and in the industrial revolutions to catch up, how is it that we can build a connectivity that allows us to do this? Now, I know there is a focus on individual infrastructure projects being done by individual countries and some of the concerns that are expressed in that regard. But at least to my mind, the real issue is the methodology that is being used, not so much the asset that is being created, which should be the subject of discussion.
More than 2,000 participants, including 600 delegates and speakers from over 92 countries, took part in the 2019 Raisina Dialogue. Global leaders like former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, former Italian Premier Paolo Gentiloni, former Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper, former Swedish Prime Minister Carl Bildt and former Afghan President Hamid Karzai, along with foreign ministers of Iran, Australia, Spain, Mongolia, Nepal, addressed the three-day conference.
It is an exchange of views and it clarifies the understanding of countries. It helps them to bring them together. It helps in bridging different points of view. For instance, in Raisina Dialogue, will be about 12 foreign ministers are coming. Foreign Minister of Russia, Mr. Lavrov, would be there. Foreign Minister of Iran is there. Deputy NSA of America is there. So different countries will put their points of view, and then how to harmonize, how to integrate, how to bring everybody together.
The Raisina Dialogue is committed to addressing the most challenging issues facing the global community. It is structured as a multi-stakeholder, cross-sectoral discussion involving heads of state, cabinet ministers and local government officials, as well as major private sector executives, members of the media and academics. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And with that, time for a very quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back after the break. Our next report takes a look at the highlights of the first 3 editions of the Raisina Dialogue. Inaugurated for the first time in 2016, the conference is hosted by the Observer Research Foundation in collaboration with the Ministry of External Affairs.
Organized by the Observer Research Foundation in collaboration with the Ministry of External Affairs, Raisina Dialogues is in its 5th edition this year. Conceived in early 2016, Raisina Dialogue takes its name from India's seat of power, Raisina Hills. The inaugural edition in 2016 saw the participation of over 120 delegates from 40 countries. Asia, regional and global connectivity was the theme. That year, it focused on Asia's physical, economic, human and digital connectivity to discover opportunities for the region. Raisina Dialogue 2017 hosted nearly 800 delegates. Over 120 speakers from over 65 countries deliberated on the theme, The New Normal, Multilateralism with Multipolarity. Inaugurated by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the event focused on strategic issues like cybersecurity and challenges. The 3rd edition in 2018 saw Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, a serving foreign head of state, inaugurating the event for the first time. Netanyahu spoke on Indo-Israel relations and his love for hard power. Delegates from 86 nations took part in the event in 2018. They included several young researchers who were selected as Young Raisina Fellows. The theme was Managing Disruptive Transitions, Ideas, Institutions and Idioms, and Terrorism, Importance of the Indo-Pacific region, Rising Threat from China, and India's growing power in the international system.
It is a very wide reach. In all the interactions, Indian participants will be presenting their own point of view, their own worldview. Where do we want the world to go? How India can work together with other countries. So it gives an opportunity for our ministers as well as analysts, think tanks, experts of foreign policy to present India's vision to the practitioners of foreign policy of other countries and try to bring them on the same page so that there is more harmony. And when we say on terrorism, on trade issues, on climate change issues, on peace and stability in the region, settlement of Afghanistan, all these issues, it becomes easier for us to get an international consensus.
Since its inception, the dialogue has attracted academics, scholars, researchers, students, journalists and politicians interested or working on international relations, geopolitics, security, nuclear issues and foreign policy. This year, with over 700 delegates from 100 countries, the 3-day event has the theme 21 at 20, Navigating the Alpha Century. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
Every year, the Raisina Dialogue brings together experts from a diverse section of disciplines and professions to address the most challenging issues facing the global community. Over the last 5 years, the event has been India's contribution to discovering solutions, identify opportunities, and provide stability to the international community that has witnessed 2 eventful decades. In this report, let's talk about the importance of the Raisina Dialogue.
India is increasingly playing a key role in international politics. Given the size of its economy, its demographic dividend and democratic values, India's position in influencing new institutions is significant. The Raisina Dialogue is an attempt to let the world see India's growing aspirations in playing a more proactive role in international relations. Since 2016, the global conference has grown in scale and scope. It has become a powerful indicator of New Delhi's willingness to play an active role in finding innovative solutions to global threats and also contribute in shaping the global order.
The Raisina Dialogue began as a partnership between the Observer Research Foundation and the Ministry of External Affairs. And the idea was, when this government came to power, that India should host a global platform which is located in New Delhi or located in India, but which gives voice to the happenings of the world. So the idea is to create a global platform which brings voices across the world to India and takes India's voices to the world.
According to experts, an event of such a large scale sets the tone for the remainder of the year. It provides the government a platform to state its position on various questions and issues of international relations. At the same time, it gives leaders, diplomats and experts from other countries to understand India's priorities in international relations. The dialogue also provides a chance for young scholars and researchers to interact with people who matter in international relations. While researchers get a platform to network and also collaborate, the event creates an ecosystem for the growth of think tanks and other policy groups.
See, by fomenting global debates, by exchanging views which on global issues, what we are discussing are not regional issues, what we are discussing are not India-specific issues, what we are discussing are issues related to broader global governance. This includes global policy on cyber norms, global policy on the commons, global policy on climate, global policy on development, and the whole host of sustainable development goals. So global debates take place within India, and the discourse in India, how Indians think about the happenings in the world, gets transmitted to the people of the world. So this is a very fervent exchange of ideas which takes place. We learn a lot as Indians, and the world learns a lot about India from this particular platform.
In the 5 years of its existence, the Raisina Dialogue has held discussions on subjects as diverse as regional and global connectivity, terrorism, maritime security threats and challenges, political cooperation, and also global governance. In 2020 as well, intensive deliberations are expected to take place around 5 thematic pillars: the nationalist impulses challenging global institutions and collective action, the debate on the global trading architecture, the role of technologies in determining political, economic and military power, the global development agenda, and the state-individual relationship in the age of digital communities and cyberspace.
Raisina Dialogue started 4 years back. This is the 5th edition. As India is growing in its stature, in its economic power, in its diplomatic outreach, it is important that India provides a forum where the strategic thinkers, practitioners, ministers, analysts can come together annually and discuss issues which impact the countries, both of geopolitics and of geoeconomics.
Even though it is in a nascent stage, the Raisina Dialogue has acquired an enviable global profile, uniting the world's best strategic thinkers. According to the Ministry of External Affairs, the synergies in the Raisina Dialogue represent India's deliberative ethos as well as its international credibility and convening power. The dialogue has grown along with India's diplomatic profile and will set the tone for its intensive diplomatic engagement this year. With inputs from Vipul Agarwal, Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of In Depth. We will be back same time tomorrow with a focus on another key subject. You can also watch our program online on YouTube. Suggestions and feedback about the program are welcome. Thank you for watching.